A seat on a plane. It's something we barely think about. But for one woman, her assigned seat in first class was about to become the stage for a vicious, racist attack. The attacker, a wealthy passenger dripping in designer labels, demanded she move, her voice laced with prejudice and entitlement. What this passenger didn't know was that the black woman she was trying to humiliate wasn't just another traveler. She was Dr. Emma Vance, the brilliant aerospace architect who had designed every single inch of the aircraft's interior, including the very seat at the center of the conflict. The CEO of the airline was also on board, and the Karma that was coming was flying at 35,000 feet. Dr. Emma Vance settled into seat 2A with a sigh of profound, quiet satisfaction. It wasn't the plush leather, the generous legroom, or the complimentary glass of champagne that brought a soft smile to her lips. It was the curve of the privacy shell, the precise angle of the personal reading light, and the subtle, woven texture of the bulkhead panel in front of her. She knew, for instance, that the composite material used in that panel was a custom-engineered polymer she had championed, reducing cabin weight by 3.4% without compromising an ounce of structural integrity. She knew the cool, brushed aluminum of the seat controls had been tested through 50,000 cycle simulations to ensure its tactile response remained perfect for the life of the aircraft. This was not just any plane. This was the Aura Airlines A390 Celestial, Flight 762, from New York's JFK to London Heathrow. And for Emma, it was more than a mode of transport. It was a testament to 4 years of her life. At 38, Dr. Emma Vance was a titan in a field most people didn't even know existed: aerospace interior architecture and ergonomics. With a PhD from MIT in aeronautical engineering and a master's in industrial design from RISD, she was a rare blend of artist and engineer. She led the team at the prestigious design firm Altitude Innovations, and the A390 Celestial cabin was her magnum opus. She had fought tooth and nail for every detail, from the dynamic LED lighting system that mimicked natural daylight cycles to reduce jet lag, to the biometric sensors in the first-class seats that could suggest subtle postural adjustments for comfort on long-haul flights. She was flying to London to accept the coveted ARIA Prize for Aeronautical Design, the highest honor in her profession. Her acceptance speech was tucked away in her carry-on, its pages filled with acknowledgments for her team, her mentors, and the unyielding belief that a journey should be as inspiring as the destination. Running a hand along the seam of the seat, she felt a surge of pride. This seat, 2A, was the prototype's direct descendant. She had spent over 200 hours in its mock-up, refining the lumbar support, positioning the tray table release for intuitive access, and selecting the specific density of the memory foam. It was, in a very real sense, her seat. The boarding process was humming along smoothly. The low melodic chimes she had helped select played softly through the cabin's advanced sound system. The flight attendants, dressed in chic navy uniforms she had also consulted on, moved with practiced efficiency. Everything was operating exactly as she had envisioned it. It was a symphony of her own creation, and she was, for a moment, perfectly at peace. She closed her eyes, soaking in the ambient hum of the cabin, a sound she knew as intimately as her own heartbeat. The peace, however, was about to be shattered. The disturbance began not with a bang, but with a scent. A cloying, expensive perfume preceded the arrival of a woman in her late 40s, dressed in a cream-colored Chanel tracksuit that screamed casual wealth. Her blonde hair was perfectly coiffed, her face a mask of smooth, Botoxed indifference. She was followed by a weary-looking man in a tailored blazer who was juggling 2 carry-on bags. The woman stopped abruptly in the aisle next to seat 2B, her gaze falling on Emma in 2A. Her ticket, clutched in a manicured hand, clearly said 2B. She looked at Emma, then at the empty seat beside her, then back at Emma. A small frown creased her forehead. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp and loud enough to cut through the cabin's calm ambiance. "I think you're in my seat." Emma opened her eyes. She offered a polite, professional smile. "Hello. I believe this is 2A, she said, gesturing to the indicator above her head. "You must be in 2B, right here by the aisle." The woman, who Emma would later learn was Carolyn Beaumont, a minor lifestyle influencer known for her luxury travel blog, did not return the smile. Her eyes scanned Emma from head to toe, taking in her simple but elegant black turtleneck, her natural hair styled in intricate braids, and the well-worn leather-bound journal resting on her lap. It was a look of instant, dismissive appraisal. "No, I don't think so," Caroline said, her tone dripping with condescension. "My husband and I prefer the window seat. It's better for my pictures. You'll have to move." It wasn't a request. It was a command. Emma's internal calm wavered, replaced by a familiar, wearying feeling. She had encountered this brand of casual entitlement before. "I'm sorry, but this is the seat I was assigned," she replied, keeping her voice even. "I specifically booked a window seat." The husband, Lucas Beaumont, stepped forward, a flush of embarrassment on his face. "Caroline, darling, it's fine. The aisle is fine. Let's just sit down." Caroline shot him a venomous look. "No, Lucas, it's not fine. I need the light. How am I supposed to get my sunrise over the Atlantic? Shot for the blog from the aisle?" She turned back to Emma, her voice hardening. "Look, it's not a big deal. Just take the aisle seat. We can just swap." "I'd prefer not to, thank you," Emma said, her politeness a thin veneer over a core of steel. "I have my reasons for wanting this seat." Reasons Caroline could never possibly comprehend. Reasons that had to do with wanting to see the wing flex during turbulence, a marvel of engineering she deeply admired. Reasons that had to do with observing how the morning light interacted with the cabin materials she had so painstakingly chosen. Caroline let out an exasperated sigh, a theatrical sound designed for an audience. "Oh, for heaven's sake! What possible reason could you have? Some people are just so difficult." She placed her hand on her hip. "Do you know how much these tickets cost? I am a Platinum Elite member with this airline. I think I'm entitled to a little accommodation." A young flight attendant named Sarah, sensing the growing tension, hurried over. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" "Yes," Caroline snapped, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Emma. "This woman is in my seat and is refusing to move. She's being incredibly difficult." Sarah looked from Caroline's ticket to the seat number, then to Emma. "Ma'am, your ticket is for 2B, the aisle seat. This passenger is correctly seated in 2A. "I don't care what the ticket says," Caroline huffed. "It's a simple swap. Why can't she just be reasonable? It's not like she needs the window." The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, thick and toxic. Someone like her. Emma felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. She had hoped for a peaceful flight, a moment to reflect on her accomplishments before the awards ceremony. Instead, she was being drawn into a tired, ugly drama she had no interest in co-authoring. But she would not be moved. Not from this seat. Not today. "The answer is no," Emma said, her voice dropping to a quiet, resolute calm. She turned her head and looked out the window, a clear signal that, for her, the conversation was over. This, she would soon discover, was a grave miscalculation. For Caroline Beaumont, it was just the beginning. Emma's dismissal was like a lit match to a puddle of gasoline. Caroline Beaumont's face, already pinched with irritation, contorted into a mask of pure indignation. The pretense of a simple mix-up evaporated, revealing the raw, ugly prejudice beneath. "How dare you!" she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch and volume. Passengers in the surrounding seats, who had been trying to mind their own business, now turned to stare openly. "You turn your back on me? Who do you think you are?" Lucas, her husband, grabbed her arm. "Caroline, for God's sake, stop it. You're making a scene." She wrenched her arm away. "I'm making a scene? She's the one causing the problem. I made a perfectly reasonable request." She leaned over the empty aisle seat, invading Emma's personal space. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper that was still loud enough for the rows around them to hear. "I know how it works," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You people get all these perks now, don't you? Probably got this seat through some diversity initiative. An upgrade you didn't even earn. The least you could do is show a little gratitude when a paying customer asks for a simple favor." The words struck Emma with physical force. "You people. Diversity initiative." The casual racism, the assumption that a black woman in first class must be there by charity and not by merit, was a depressingly familiar tune. But hearing it here, in this cabin, her cabin, was a special kind of violation. Every meticulously designed curve and surface suddenly felt tainted. Emma turned back slowly, her calm exterior belying the storm of anger and disappointment raging within her. She met Caroline's hateful gaze without flinching. "My presence in this seat," Emma said, her voice dangerously quiet and precise, "is not up for your debate or approval. I paid for my ticket and I am in my assigned seat. That is the end of the matter." The flight attendant, Sarah, looked completely out of her depth. "Ma'am," she pleaded with Caroline, "we really need to clear the aisle. Please take your seat." "I will not," Caroline shrieked, her composure completely gone. "I will not sit next to this rude, ungrateful person. I am a valued customer. I have over 1 million miles with Aura Airlines. I have a blog with 200,000 followers. I will ruin you. I'll post about this, about the horrible service and the kind of clientele you're letting into first class now." The threat hung in the air. The mention of her social media following was the weapon she clearly thought was her ace in the hole. She was treating the situation not as a human interaction, but as a customer service complaint to be won through intimidation. Another passenger, a man in a sharp business suit in 3A, spoke up. "Oh, for goodness sake, lady, just sit down. You're holding up the whole plane." Caroline whirled on him. "You mind your own business." The situation was spiraling out of control. Sarah, the young flight attendant, spoke into her wrist communicator, her voice trembling slightly. "Davies, I need a supervisor in the first-class cabin. Section 2. We have a passenger dispute." Emma, meanwhile, closed her eyes for a brief moment, centering herself. She thought of the years of late nights, the endless computer simulations, the battles with cynical budget committees to get the funding for the ergonomic research. She thought of the sheer force of will it took to climb to the top of a predominantly white, male-dominated industry. She had earned her place in the world, and she had earned her place in this seat. She would not be intimidated by a woman whose only notable skill seemed to be broadcasting her own ignorance. When she opened her eyes, a senior flight attendant, a calm, authoritative man named Davies, had arrived. He had the weary but firm look of a man who had seen it all. "Good morning," he said, his voice a calm counterpoint to Caroline's hysteria. "My name is Davies. I'm the cabin purser. What seems to be the trouble here?" "The trouble," Caroline spat, "is that your airline's standards have clearly gone down the drain." She pointed a trembling finger at Emma. "This woman has stolen my seat, and your incompetent staff are doing nothing about it." Davies listened patiently, his eyes flicking from Caroline to Emma to the tickets in their hands, which Sarah was now holding out to him. He examined them for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at Caroline. "Ma'am," he said, his tone polite but unyielding. "I can see here that you are ticketed for seat 2B, and Dr. Vance is ticketed for 2A. She is in the correct seat." He paused, letting the formal title hang in the air. "Dr. Vance." The use of her title seemed to infuriate Caroline even more. "Doctor? Doctor of what? Basket weaving? Don't be ridiculous. Now, are you going to move her, or do I need to speak to the captain?" Davies's patience was clearly wearing thin. "The captain is busy preparing for departure. Now, ma'am, I can offer you another aisle seat in row 4, or you can take your assigned seat at 2B. Those are the options." "That is not an option," Caroline yelled. The "fasten seatbelt" sign pinged on. "I demand that you remove her. She is being aggressive and hostile." It was a blatant, desperate lie, and a dangerous one. Accusing a black person of aggression is a classic, loaded tactic. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. This was no longer just about a seat. It was about an attempt to frame her, to punish her for daring to exist in a space this woman felt she owned. Davies's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, at this point, you are creating a disturbance and delaying an international flight. I must ask you one last time to take your seat. If you refuse, we will have to take further action." The standoff was reaching its peak. Caroline Beaumont, trapped by her own arrogance, crossed her arms. "Fine, go get your captain. Go get the CEO for all I care. We'll see who this airline values more." It was a fateful, throwaway line, a piece of hyperbole she would come to regret for the rest of her life. Because, unbeknownst to her, the CEO of Aura Airlines was indeed on the flight, and he had been watching the entire, ugly spectacle from seat 1A. Just as Davies was about to signal for ground security, a calm, powerful voice emerged from the front of the cabin. "That won't be necessary, Davies." All heads turned. A man in his early 50s, impeccably dressed in a simple, dark grey suit, was walking towards them. He had an air of effortless authority, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. His silver-streaked hair was neatly styled, and his eyes, a piercing blue, were fixed on the scene with a look of profound disappointment. This was Marcus Thorne, the founder and CEO of Aura Airlines. He was a visionary in the industry, known for his obsession with customer experience and innovation. He was also notoriously private and rarely flew on his own commercial flights without a great deal of anonymity. Today, however, he was on his way to the same Aurea Prize ceremony in London, as Aura was a primary sponsor. Caroline Beaumont didn't recognize him. To her, he was just another wealthy passenger in a suit. "Finally," she said, assuming he was coming to her defense. "Someone with some sense. Sir, can you please tell this staff that I—" Thorne walked right past her, his attention focused solely on Emma. His stern expression melted into one of warmth and genuine respect. "Dr. Vance," he said, extending a hand. "Marcus Thorne, it is an absolute honor to have you on board with us today. I was so hoping I might have the chance to say hello." Emma, momentarily stunned, shook his hand. "Mr. Thorne, the pleasure is all mine. I didn't realize you'd be on this flight. I wouldn't miss the arias for the world," he replied with a smile, "especially when the person who transformed my airline is the guest of honor." The cabin, which had been buzzing with whispers, fell into a stunned, absolute silence. You could hear the faint whir of the ventilation system she had helped design. Caroline Beaumont's jaw went slack. Her perfectly made-up face cycled through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, dawning horror. She looked from the powerful man, the CEO, to Emma, the woman she had just verbally assaulted, and back again. The pieces were not computing. I don't understand," Caroline stammered, her voice a mere whisper of its former shriek. "You two know each other?" Marcus Thorne finally turned his cool, assessing gaze upon her. It was like being pinned by a laser. "Know her?" Thorne's voice was low, but it carried to every corner of the first-class cabin. "Mrs. Beaumont, is it? I don't just know Dr. Vance. I spent the better part of 2 years personally collaborating with her and her team at Altitude Innovations." He gestured around the cabin with a sweeping motion of his arm. "This plane, this A390 Celestial, is the flagship of my fleet. Its interior is the new global standard for luxury and comfort, and every single element of it, from the ergonomic curvature of the seats to the hypoallergenic, recycled fabrics, to the very air circulation system that is keeping you comfortable right now, was conceived, developed, and brought to life under the direct leadership of Dr. Emma Vance." He took a step closer to Caroline, his voice dropping further, making his words even more impactful. "The seat you are so desperately trying to acquire," he said, pointing to 2A, "is not just a piece of furniture. It is the culmination of thousands of hours of research in biomechanics and passenger psychology. Dr. Vance herself personally oversaw its final design. You are not just being rude to a fellow passenger, madam. You are displaying a shocking level of disrespect to the very architect of the experience you so loudly claim to be entitled to." The silence in the cabin was now so profound it felt like a physical weight. Every passenger was locked onto the drama, many with their phones discreetly recording. Lucas Beaumont looked as though he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. He was tugging at his wife's sleeve, trying to pull her away, but she was frozen, her face a pale, horrified mask. Emma sat quietly, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. There was a fierce, burning vindication, but it was mixed with a deep sadness that it had come to this. She had never wanted public praise for her work to be used as a weapon. Her work was meant to bring comfort and beauty to the world, not to be the centerpiece of a public shaming. But the shaming was not yet over. Marcus Thorne was not a man who tolerated ugliness on his aircraft, especially when it was directed at someone he held in such high esteem. He turned to Davies, the purser, his expression now one of cold, hard business. "Davies," he commanded, "this passenger and her husband have violated several articles of the carriage contract, including creating a disturbance, harassing another passenger, and refusing to comply with crew instructions. Their behavior is a security risk and is completely unacceptable on any Aura flight." He then looked directly into Caroline Beaumont's eyes and delivered the final, devastating blow. "You and your husband will be escorted off this aircraft immediately. Your luggage will be removed. Your tickets will be cancelled without refund. Furthermore, as of this moment, your Platinum Elite status and all associated miles are permanently revoked. You are both banned from flying with Aura Airlines. For life." The words hung in the air, each one a hammer blow. Banned. For life. For Caroline Beaumont, a woman whose entire public persona was built on the foundation of luxury travel and elite status, it was a death sentence. The color drained completely from her face. The carefully constructed mask of superiority crumbled, revealing a desperate, panicked woman. "No," she whispered, the word barely audible. "You can't. Please, I apologize. I was stressed. The flight—" "You were not stressed, Mrs. Beaumont," Marcus Thorne cut in, his voice devoid of any sympathy. You were racist, you were abusive, and you were ignorant. You made assumptions about a fellow human being based on the color of her skin. And in a spectacular twist of irony, you chose to do so to a woman whose intellect and talent are responsible for the very luxury you so clearly worship. He gestured to 2 ground security officers who had been discreetly summoned by Davies and were now waiting at the front of the cabin. These gentlemen will escort you back to the terminal. Lucas Beaumont finally found his voice, a pleading, pathetic whine. Sir, please, it was my wife. I had nothing to do with it. Can't I just— You stood by and allowed it to happen, Thorne said, not even bothering to look at him. Silence in the face of such behavior is complicity. You are both leaving. The walk of shame was excruciating. As Caroline and Lucas gathered their designer carry-on bags, a low murmur spread through the cabin. The passenger in 3A, who had spoken up earlier, let out a slow, deliberate clap. Another passenger joined in, then another. Soon a ripple of applause filled the first-class cabin. A quiet, powerful ovation, not for the Beaumonts' departure, but in support of Emma and the justice that had been so swiftly delivered. Caroline's face was a mess of tears and ruined makeup. She refused to make eye contact with anyone. Her head bowed as she was led down the aisle. As she passed seat 2A, her eyes briefly met Emma's. In them, Emma saw no remorse, only a raw, bottomless humiliation. There was no lesson learned, only a reputation destroyed. And in that moment, Emma felt a pang not of pity, but of a deep, profound sorrow for the emptiness of the woman's life. As the jet bridge door closed behind them with a solid, final thud, a sense of relief washed over the cabin. The flight attendants, their professionalism restored, moved quickly to prepare for departure. Marcus Thorne turned back to Emma, his expression softening once more. Dr. Vance, he said, his voice filled with sincere regret. On behalf of every single employee at Aura Airlines, I am profoundly sorry that you had to endure that. It is completely antithetical to everything we stand for, and I am mortified that it happened on one of my aircraft, let alone this aircraft. Thank you, Mr. Thorne, Emma replied, her voice steady. I appreciate your intervention. It was the bare minimum, he insisted. Now please, the seat next to you, 2B, is obviously available, but frankly, I think you deserve better. We have a crew rest suite in the upper deck of the A390. It's a private bunk with a full bed. It was your team's design, actually. I'd be honored if you would be my guest and use it for the duration of the flight. You deserve some peace and quiet after that ordeal. Emma considered for a moment. The idea of retreating to a quiet, private space was incredibly appealing. It would give her time to process, to recenter herself before landing in London. Thank you, Mr. Thorne, she said with a genuine smile. I'd like that very much. As a flight attendant led her towards the private stairs to the upper deck, the man from 3A leaned into the aisle. What you did back there, your composure, he said with deep respect. Incredible. You have a fan for life, Dr. Vance. Emma simply nodded, a quiet acknowledgement of the unexpected solidarity. As she ascended the stairs, leaving the main cabin behind, she felt the engines of the A390 Celestial begin to spool up. The plane she had poured her heart and soul into was finally preparing to fly, leaving the ugliness behind on the tarmac. The crew rest suite was a marvel of compact, ergonomic design. It was a serene, isolated pod, a world away from the main cabin. As Emma settled onto the comfortable mattress, she could feel the gentle vibrations of the aircraft as it taxied onto the runway. She closed her eyes, and when the powerful engines roared to life, pressing her back into the cushions during takeoff. She didn't feel fear or anxiety. She felt the raw, beautiful power of engineering, a force she understood intimately. About an hour into the flight, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Marcus Thorne. "May I come in for a moment?" he asked. "I've brought you some tea." "Of course," Emma said, sitting up. He handed her a cup of chamomile tea and took a seat on a small jump seat built into the suite. For a few moments, they sat in a comfortable silence, the only sound the distant hum of the engines. "I still can't apologize enough," Marcus began. "I've already been on the phone with my executive team. We're implementing a new tier of mandatory de-escalation and implicit bias training for all cabin crews, effective immediately. What happened today is a systemic failure, not just an individual one." "That's a positive step," Emma acknowledged. "But the root of the problem isn't with your crew, Marcus. They were put in an impossible position. The problem is a mindset, the one that sees a person like me in a place of privilege and immediately assumes it must be a mistake or a handout." "I know," he said, nodding gravely. "And I'm not sure how a corporation fights that, but we have to try." "On a brighter note," he said, changing the subject, "I read the advance brief on your ARIA prize. It's for your entire body of work, not just the A390. They called your design philosophy human-centric engineering. I love that. It's exactly what we were trying to achieve." A real smile touched Emma's lips for the first time since boarding. The conversation shifted from the ugly incident to their shared passion. They talked for nearly an hour about the future of air travel, about sustainable materials, about the psychological impact of cabin lighting. They were two professionals, two creators, speaking a shared language of innovation and purpose. In this small, quiet suite, miles above the earth, Emma felt her spirit begin to heal. Meanwhile, in the world below, the story was exploding. The video, filmed by the passenger in 3A and several others, had been uploaded to social media before the plane had even reached cruising altitude. It went viral with breathtaking speed. The initial clips showed Caroline's tirade, her racist comments clear as day. Then came the second part, the dramatic arrival of the CEO and the epic, karmic reveal of Emma's identity. The internet erupted. Hashtags like Shucks Plane Karen, Yucks Dr. Vance, and Aura Airlines Justice trended globally. Caroline Beaumont's blog and social media accounts were inundated with millions of furious comments. News outlets from CNN to the BBC picked up the story. Altitude Innovations, Emma's firm, released a statement expressing their immense pride in Dr. Vance and their disgust at the treatment she had received. Aura Airlines' stock, contrary to Caroline's threats, actually ticked up a few points, as the public overwhelmingly praised Marcus Thorne's decisive, no-nonsense response. By the time Flight 762 began its descent into London, Caroline Beaumont's career as a lifestyle influencer was over. The luxury brands she partnered with dropped her in a cascade of press releases. Her blog was shuttered due to the sheer volume of negative traffic crashing its servers. She had become a global pariah overnight, a living meme for entitlement and prejudice. The karma had not just been swift, it had been nuclear. Emma remained blissfully unaware of the digital firestorm. She had spent the rest of the flight resting and putting the final touches on her acceptance speech. The incident with Caroline Beaumont had, in an unexpected way, clarified what she wanted to say. It had given her words a new weight, a new urgency. When the plane landed smoothly at Heathrow, a special ground services agent was waiting to escort her and Marcus Thorne through a private channel, bypassing the main terminal and the press that had already gathered, alerted to the story. "It seems you're quite famous now," Marcus said wryly as they were whisked away in a private car. He quickly filled her in on the viral nature of the story. Emma listened, a complex mix of emotions on her face. She felt no joy in Caroline's public downfall. There was no victory in watching someone's life implode, even if they had brought it upon themselves. The victory, she realized, was in what came next. That evening, standing on the stage at the ARIA Prize Gala, in a stunning, midnight blue gown, Emma looked out at the sea of faces, the most brilliant minds in the world of aviation and design. She held the heavy, beautifully crafted award in her hand. She began with her prepared remarks, thanking her team, her family, her mentors. She spoke of her passion for creating spaces that were not just functional, but also humane and beautiful. Then she paused and took a deep breath, going off script. "Earlier today," she began, her voice clear and strong, "I had an experience on one of my own designs, an experience that reminded me that no matter how advanced our technology becomes, no matter how elegant our engineering, our progress is ultimately limited by our ability to see humanity in one another." She didn't name names or go into details. She didn't have to. The story was already known. "Design is about more than aesthetics or ergonomics," she continued. "At its best, it is a statement of our values. It is about creating spaces where everyone feels they belong. My work is not just about the curve of a seat, but about the character of the people who occupy it. Let us commit ourselves not only to building better machines, but to building a better, more inclusive world for them to fly in. Let us design a future where a person's place in the world is defined not by the prejudice of others, but by the content of their character and the scope of their dreams." The room rose to its feet in a thunderous, sustained standing ovation. It was an ovation for her work, for her grace, and for her unyielding spirit. From his table, Marcus Thorne applauded the loudest. Looking out at the crowd, Emma Vance, Dr. Vance, the architect of the skies, felt a profound sense of arrival. She had faced down ugliness and ignorance in a cabin of her own creation, and had emerged not just unscathed, but stronger. She was flying higher than any aircraft, carried aloft by the twin engines of her talent and her integrity, and from that altitude the view was magnificent. The standing ovation eventually faded. The gala concluded in a flurry of congratulations and flashing cameras. Marcus Thorne personally ensured Emma was escorted back to her penthouse suite at the Corinthia, a haven of quiet luxury overlooking the Thames. But as the door clicked shut, leaving her in a silence broken only by the distant hum of London, the full weight of the day descended upon her. The ARIA Prize sat gleaming on the marble mantelpiece, a testament to a lifetime of dedication. Yet her mind kept replaying the ugly scene from 12 hours earlier. Caroline Beaumont's contorted face, the venom in her words, the chilling moment of being accused of aggression. The vindication had been swift and absolute, but it had left scars. She walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights, feeling a profound sense of dislocation. She had become, in the span of a single transatlantic flight, public property. Her phone, which she'd put on silent, was a frantic hive of activity. Hundreds of text messages from friends, family, and colleagues. Dozens of missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. A quick glance at her email inbox revealed subject lines that made her stomach churn. CNN interview request. Good Morning America wants your story. Book deal inquiry. Dr. Vance, your story can inspire millions. They wanted to package her experience, turn her trauma into a tidy narrative of triumph. They didn't see the woman who felt a strange, hollow ache in her chest. She hadn't sought to be a hero. She had simply wanted to sit in the seat she had designed and fly in peace. The incident had forced her into a role she never auditioned for, the graceful victim, the stoic symbol of resistance against prejudice. It was an exhausting, ill-fitting costume. She finally answered a call from a familiar number. "Hey, Lena," came the warm, worried voice of her younger sister, Maya. "Hey, May," Emma breathed, the sound of her sister's voice a lifeline. "I've been trying to call you for hours. I saw the video. Are you okay? I mean, really okay?" Tears Emma hadn't realized she'd been holding back began to well in her eyes. "I don't know," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "It was uglier than the video even showed. And now, everyone is calling me brave. I don't feel brave, Maya. I feel tired, and I feel this weird sense of sadness for her. Sadness for that horrible woman. Lena, she was a monster. I know, but her whole life just imploded. And for what? Because she couldn't stand the sight of me sitting in a chair? It's all so pathetic, so empty. I feel like I just witnessed a soul die, and the whole world is cheering about it. This was the part no one would understand, the part that couldn't be squeezed into a 3-minute news segment. The victory felt tainted by the sheer totality of the loser's destruction. It was one thing to want justice. It was another to watch a person be digitally erased from existence in real time. Meanwhile, in a sterile beige room at an airport hotel near Heathrow, the destruction was far from digital. Carolyn and Lucas Beaumont were not speaking. The television was off. The silence was thick with blame and ruin. Caroline sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. Her social media accounts were gone, suspended by the platforms due to a flood of reports for hate speech. A search of her name brought up 1,000 articles, all with the same unflattering screenshot of her face. Mid-shriek. Plain Karen was the #1 trend worldwide. Lucas stood by the window, his back to her. He had spent the last several hours on the phone with his law firm's senior partner, who had seen the video. The fallout was catastrophic. Their firm had several major clients who championed diversity and inclusion. His association with Carolyn was now a liability. "They're asking me to take an indefinite leave of absence," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. They called it protecting the firm's reputation. Caroline didn't respond. She was reading an email from her publisher, a 7-figure deal for her travel memoir, Passport to Perfection. The contract was being terminated, effective immediately, citing a morals clause. "All of it," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "Everything. It's all gone." Lucas finally turned to face her. His face, usually placid and accommodating, was a mask of cold fury. "Yes, Caroline, it is. And whose fault is that? I told you to sit down. I begged you to stop. But you couldn't, could you? You just couldn't stand that she wouldn't bend to your will." "My will," she shot back, her voice raw. "She was insolent. She was a passenger in her assigned seat," he roared, slamming his hand on the desk. "That's all she was. But you couldn't see a person, could you? You saw a target for all your bitterness and your ridiculous, petty snobbery. Did you ever stop to think that maybe, just maybe, a black woman could be a doctor? Or an architect? Or the damn CEO? No. Because in your tiny, withered world, the only thing that matters is status, and you assumed she had none." He picked up his briefcase, his movements sharp and final. "I'm done, Caroline. I've been done for years, but I was too much of a coward to admit it. I've been enabling your cruelty, making excuses for your behavior. And for what? So you could get a better picture for your vapid blog? So we could maintain this illusion of a perfect life?" He walked to the door. "My lawyer will be in touch with yours. I'm going back to the city. You can figure out your own way home. If any airline will even have you." The door closed, leaving Caroline alone in the suffocating silence of the room. The karma wasn't just the loss of followers or a book deal. It was the complete, systemic dismantling of her life, revealing the hollow foundation upon which it had been built. She was left with nothing but the ugly reflection of the person she had chosen to be. 6 months later, the world had largely moved on. Plain Karen was a distant memory, replaced by a dozen other fleeting outrages. For Emma Vance, however, the echoes of that day had reshaped her path in ways she never could have anticipated. After a week of seclusion in London, she had politely declined every interview and book offer. Instead, she released a single, eloquent statement. In it, she spoke not of her own victimhood, but of the need for empathy and the power of design to foster connection. She ended by announcing she would be taking a sabbatical from Altitude Innovations to explore new ways to apply human-centric design principles to social challenges. The statement caught the attention of Marcus Thorne. He flew to Boston to meet her in person, not at a corporate office, but at the MIT Museum. They walked among exhibits, showcasing marvels of engineering and innovation. "What you said in your statement," Marcus began, "about using design to foster connection. That's what I've been thinking about ever since that day. An airline shouldn't just be a transportation service, it should be a facilitator of human dignity." He stopped in front of a display on advanced aeronautics. "Emma, I didn't just come here to apologize again. I came with a proposal. Aura Airlines is establishing a new, independent advisory board, the Aura Council for Human-Centric Travel. It won't report to marketing or operations. It will report directly to me. Its mandate will be to re-examine and redesign every single passenger touchpoint, from our advertising and booking websites to our airport lounges and in-flight protocols, through the lens of inclusivity, respect, and dignity. I don't want anyone else to ever feel the way you felt on my plane. I want you to be its inaugural chair." Emma was taken aback. This was more than a PR move. It was a genuine, structural commitment to change. It was an opportunity to take the ugliest experience of her professional life and use it as the foundation for her most meaningful work. "And your first project," Marcus continued, "will be to establish the Dr. Emma Vance Ascend Scholarship, fully funded by Aura, to support and mentor women of color in the fields of aerospace engineering and industrial design." This was the answer. This was how she would use her new, unwanted platform, not by telling her story over and over, but by building a new one, a better one. "I accept," she said, a sense of profound purpose settling over her. A year later, Emma was on board another A390 Celestial, flying from London to Singapore. She was not in a private suite, but in an aisle seat in business class, observing. The cabin was her creation, but it felt different now. Fuller. The flight attendants moved with a new kind of awareness. The training modules she had helped design, which used virtual reality to simulate difficult passenger scenarios and teach de-escalation with empathy, were now standard across the fleet. She watched as a young flight attendant helped an elderly man who was struggling with his tablet. The attendant knelt beside him, speaking with unhurried patience and kindness. A small act, but it was everything. It was the design behind the design. Later in the flight, she was reviewing applications for the first round of the Ascend Scholarship. The essays were filled with the dreams of brilliant young women who saw a future for themselves in the stars. One application, from a young woman at Howard University, stood out. She wrote, "Seeing Dr. Vance's story wasn't about the woman who yelled at her. It was about seeing a black woman who had already reached a height I didn't know was possible." She designed the space, and in doing so, she created a space for all of us. Emma leaned her head back against the familiar, perfect curve of the seat she knew so well. She looked out the window at the endless, brilliant blue of the stratosphere. The incident with Caroline Beaumont had been an attempt to put her in her place, to make her small. But it had done the opposite. It had expanded her world beyond the confines of blueprints and polymer composites. She had been forced into the spotlight, but she had refused to be defined by that single, ugly moment. Instead, she had taken the platform she was given and used it to redesign something far more complex than a plane's interior. She was building pathways. She was designing a future where more people could fly, in every sense of the word. And from her seat, a place she had earned 1,000 times over, the journey ahead looked boundless. 2 years had passed since the incident on Flight 762. The world had, as it does, moved on. For Dr. Emma Vance, however, the world hadn't just moved on. It had been fundamentally reshaped. She now split her time between her demanding role at Altitude Innovations and her position as chair of the Aura Council. The work was challenging, but deeply fulfilling, transforming airline policy into a more compassionate, human-first endeavor. But today was about something more personal. It was about the future. Emma stood inside the full-scale interior mock-up of the new A410 Starliner at the Altitude Innovations headquarters. The air hummed with the quiet creativity of her team, but her focus was on the young woman standing beside her, Kemi Adebayo. Kemi, the inaugural recipient of the Dr. Emma Vance Ascend Scholarship, was a brilliant, fiercely intelligent student from Georgia Tech, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and nervous energy. "This was the first component I ever designed on my own," Emma said, her voice soft as she pointed to a uniquely curved overhead bin latch. "I spent a month on it, worried it was too audacious. My mentor at the time told me, good design isn't about being safe, it's about being right." Kemi ran her fingers over the cool metal, her expression reverent. "I read your story, Dr. Vance," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The one from the flight. My professor showed it to us as an example of grace under pressure. But it was your statement afterward that made me apply for this scholarship. You talked about building a better world, not just a better airplane." Emma smiled, a genuine, warm expression that reached her eyes. "That incident, it taught me that my work wasn't finished when the plane was built. The hardware is only half of the equation. The software, the human experience inside it, is the other half. The most important half." Emma led Kemi over to a display wall where framed original concept sketches were hung. In the center was a detailed cross-section drawing of a first-class seat. Seat 2A. "This is where it all started," Emma said, her tone reflective, not bitter. "I spent hundreds of hours refining this design for optimal comfort, for safety, for a sense of personal sanctuary. I never imagined it would become a battleground." She turned to Kemi, her gaze direct and empowering. "A woman once tried to take this seat from me because she believed I didn't belong there. She saw the color of my skin, and it blinded her to everything else. Her life was defined by the status she thought a seat like this gave her." Emma paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Her name was Caroline Beaumont. After the video went viral, her entire world collapsed. A Whatever Happened to article last year found her working as a receptionist at a dental office in a small town using her maiden name. She lost everything because she valued the symbol of the seat more than the humanity of the person sitting in it. Let that be a lesson in what not to design your life around. She then tapped the blueprint. "But this seat is also the reason you are here today." The ugliness of that moment created the energy for something beautiful. It created the council. It created this scholarship. It created an opportunity for you. Emma placed a hand on Kemi's shoulder. Your job, Kemi, is not just to design better latches or more comfortable seats. It's to ensure the spaces you create are worthy of the people in them. To build things that bring us together. To be an architect of not just objects, but of opportunity and respect. That is the real legacy. That is how we ascend. Tears welled in Kemi's eyes as she nodded, the full meaning of the scholarship's name dawning on her. She wasn't just here to learn how to build planes. She was here to learn how to lift people up. Standing there, in the heart of innovation, mentored by a woman who had turned a moment of profound disrespect into a movement of profound change, Kemi knew she was exactly where she belonged. The torch had been passed. A new flight was just beginning. Justice isn't always served, but on Aura Airlines. Flight 762, it was delivered with pinpoint precision. Dr. Emma Vance's story is a powerful reminder that prejudice is often built on a foundation of profound ignorance, and that grace, dignity, and excellence are the ultimate answers to hate. It shows us that a person's true worth lies in their character and accomplishments, not the color of their skin or the assumptions of others. The world needs more people like Dr. Vance and more leaders like Marcus Thorne who are willing to stand up and do the right thing without hesitation. If this story of poetic justice and quiet triumph resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and be sure to subscribe for more stories of real-life karma and inspiring strength. What would you have done in this situation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.